and then drove here to the Southland. When their money ran out, prosecutors alleged they stabbed 43-year-old Jacqueline Kirkham and then stole her car to drive back home to New Mexico. The third teen remains in New Mexico. He has not yet been charged.
An employee of a Costa Mesa mental hospital was charged with murder today. 38-year-old Michael Rahming of Long Beach is accused of shooting one co-worker to death and wounding 2 others in a rampage at the Fairview Developmental Center Tuesday morning. Rahming reportedly had an ongoing dispute with his supervisors at the facility.
And at long last, some encouraging news from Ventura County. Word tonight that Highway 101 is moving closer to reopening. We'll have the latest.
Plus, President Bush almost breaks down in tears before returning from the Soviet Union. We'll show you why.
And the population at the San Diego Zoo grows by 3. Stay with us to check out the new residents.
I'm Mark Thompson. Can you believe it? No 90-degree days in the month of July. It's been one of the coolest summers. I'll be back with one of the coolest guys as neighborhood weather takes to the streets of Southern California tonight, later on Fox News.
Tonight's news is brought to you by your Southern California Ford dealers.
You just fill it up and you can go over 100 miles farther than a Chevy. You hate stopping for gas. You can carry over 1,500 pounds in a Ford. Bend your knees. It's cheaper to buy than a Chevy, and it's worth more when you trade it in. Not that you ever would. Can we squeeze this in?
Coming from Orion Home Video, Dances with Wolves. Winner of 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Screenplay, and Best Director, Kevin Costner. Dances with Wolves, coming to video stores everywhere August 28th from Orion Home Video.
At Lucky, wherever you look, you'll save. A few cents here, a few cents there. And even more with key buy savings like these. Everyone loves Nabisco Teddy Graham's Bear Witches Graham sandwiches. Kettle cooked chippers and assorted varieties are also key buy priced. And California grown whole frying chicken is 55 cents a pound. With lower prices overall every time you shop, you'll save more than just a drop in the bucket at Lucky.
You get chicken, how about sirloin? Grab all the ribs that you can purloin. Be my little barbecue tonight. Any old time, any old weather, we'll start the fire by rubbing up together. Be my little barbecue tonight.
The Black Angus Barbecue Platter. A great deal of steak, chicken, and baby back ribs. Now only $9.95. But get them while they're hot.
Cleanup crews working all night in Ventura County tonight trying to clear away the remaining freight cars from that Southern Pacific train that derailed 5 days ago last Sunday. Michelle Holden has been in Seacliff all day long. She has this update.
Heavy cranes were at the derailment site in Seacliff all day, lifting the damaged Southern Pacific train cars off the tracks. 12 cars were removed, only 2 remain. Officials were hopeful those 2 would be off by tonight. They will, however, present a challenge because one train car is leaning against a column on the 101 bridge. The other is filled with a highly flammable chemical used for dry cleaning. Ventura County Fire Captain Norm Plott says crews will continue working through the night.
The hazardous materials teams are in the process right now of doing a grid work for the remaining hazardous materials in the hot zone that is left.
Even with all that's been accomplished today, Plott says there are still several variables that remain. However, he says if all goes as hoped, there could, and he's stressing could, be a decision on the 101 opening by midnight. In nearby communities like Ojai, word of the highway opening can't come soon enough. Traffic here is now a problem in a city where you see a horse and buggy cross town. But now, since highways 33 and 150 have become the detour route and 150 runs right through Ojai, folks here have traffic jams. At the derailment site, a train arrived carrying pre-assembled replacement tracks. Southern Pacific is hoping to begin repairing the damaged railroad tracks tomorrow. In Seacliff, Michelle Holden, Fox 11 News.
And in South Carolina, investigators zeroing in on a track switch as the possible cause of yesterday's deadly Amtrak derailment. 7 passengers were killed, at least 78 other people hurt when the last 6 cars of the train jumped the tracks. Now, that switch directs trains from one track to another, but officials say it was not in the right place. They're not in the proper position after the accident. Investigators are also looking into passengers' claims that emergency crews responded slowly. Apparently, there were communications problems, possibly caused by a faulty radio receiver.
Now, more on our top story, the investigation into yesterday's deadly bus crash in Palm Springs. As Tony Valdez said earlier, serious questions are being asked about school bus safety, the use of seat belts, and driver training. Investigative reporter Bill Ritter takes a closer look.
Question number 1. Could seat belts have saved any lives? California, like most states, does not require seat belts on buses. It's a cold, calculated decision. Putting in seat belts cost at least $5,000 per bus. Last year in California, nearly 700 students were injured in school bus accidents. 200 others were injured in tour bus accidents. And there's a theory among law enforcement that if the Palm Springs bus had seat belts, the death toll could have been higher, because the belts are bolted to part of the frame, and the frame tore completely apart from the rest of the bus. Question number 2, how safe are Mayflower buses? We asked the California Highway Patrol that question. We came up with a disturbing answer. Authorities don't know exactly how safe Mayflower is. What they did give us was this computer printout from their new multi-million-dollar computer. It lists more than 550 violations against Mayflower in the last 12 months, 200 of them for brake violations. But there's a big problem with these numbers that are available to the public. The numbers are wrong. That's because the numbers also include tickets issued to Mayflower Moving Trucks, the parent company of Mayflower school buses. Now, CHP officials say the bus in the crash did pass its latest inspection, but that was a year ago. There's been no state inspection of the bus since last August. As for the other Mayflower buses, the CHP says it can come up with safety numbers in a day or 2. Question number 3, what about the record of the driver who died in the crash? 23-year-old Richard Gonzalez Jr. was just licensed as a school bus driver in April last year. The DMV records show only 1 violation, driving without proof of insurance and without a front license plate on his personal car. Now, we called Mayflower several times today for comments, but our calls were not returned. In Los Angeles, I'm Bill Ritter, Fox 11 News.
LA City school officials say they'll be waiting for the results of this crash investigation. Then they'll decide what to do with 44 Mayflower school buses under contract with the district.
New details tonight on the torture of the American POWs in the Gulf War. We'll tell you about it in a moment.
Plus, nearly 6 months ago, war became the answer to a diplomatic stalemate. Our special Legacy of War report when Fox News continues.
Tonight's news is brought to you by Acura Automobiles and by Bullock's Department Stores.
The new Acura Legend LS Coupe features ultra-precise handling. So were it up to our engineers, this is how you'd see our car. It also offers exceptional styling. So were it up to our designers, this is how you'd see our car. And its race-bred engine can rocket you to 60 miles per hour in 6.99 seconds. So were it up to our lawyers, this is how you'd see our car. Fortunately, they don't get a vote.
Bullock's pre-season sale, the shopping opportunity of the year. You'll save on fall's newest fashions now, before the fall season, at our lowest prices of the year. Everything you need for fall, from the names you really want. Our biggest sale of the year. Bullock's pre-season sale. Don't delay. Prices go up August 5th.
The Dodger File is presented by Pacific Bell Smart Yellow Pages. Dodger Stadium 1976. Resolute action by Chicago's Rick Monday saved the American flag from burning. More heroics after this.
Well, I'm a programmer with an insurance company.
Okay, sounds pretty dull, unimaginative job to me. You probably couldn't think in a million years of something that's not in the Pacific Bell Smart Yellow Pages.
Something that's not in?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Has it ever let you down? Tell the truth.
Let me down?
Has it ever failed you?
Hey, I sit on it when my terminal's not high enough.
Oh, you mean, in other words...
Yeah, it lifts me. Other people always ask me where it's at. I lie a little bit, but, you know...
That's kind of a low-tech application, Jackson, but we'll accept that.
Well, you gotta have it. Well, you look down, you want to look up, get the yellow pages.
October 19, 1981, Dodger Rick Monday saved another flag, the National League pennant. His solo homer in the 9th inning of Game 5 of the National League Championship Series against Montreal gave the Dodgers a 2-1 lead, and they held on to win the pennant and the World Series against the Yankees.
President Bush is back home at the White House tonight after wrapping up the first post-Cold War summit. The president's last stop in the Soviet Union was Kiev, using the visit to urge leaders of the Soviet republics to use restraint in their demands for more freedom from Moscow. Mr. Bush also made a pilgrimage to Babi Yar, placing a wreath at a memorial to thousands of Russian Jews killed by the Nazis in World War II.
The Holocaust occurred because good men and women averted their eyes from unprecedented evil. And the Nazis fell when good men and women opened their eyes, summoned their courage and faith, and fought for democracy.
Afterward, en route back to Washington, the president again praised Mikhail Gorbachev, saying that he had achieved what Mr. Bush called astonishing things in the Soviet Union. Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir has agreed to a U.S. plan for historic Middle East peace talks. Shamir made his announcement today after meetings with Secretary of State James Baker. The proposal now goes to the Israeli cabinet for approval on Sunday, but the question of Palestinian representation still remains. Baker is to meet with Palestinian leaders tomorrow to decide which of them will negotiate at the proposed talks.
All U.S. POWs captured during the Persian Gulf War were tortured and physically abused by the Iraqis. That testimony on Capitol Hill today from an Army colonel who described how Iraqi interrogators used cattle prods and rubber hoses and sticks and leather straps to beat the POWs. One prisoner had his ears attached to an electric device that delivered a shock that caused one of his teeth to explode. A congressional committee is weighing the possibility of war crimes trials in the wake of the Gulf War. 23 Americans were taken prisoner during that conflict. All of them were eventually released. The fighting in the Gulf has been over for nearly 6 months. That war began after long months of diplomacy failed to get Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. Tonight in our Legacy of War special report, we look at those diplomatic efforts and what happened next. Operation Desert Storm began January 16th after 5.5 months of diplomacy and UN negotiations and resolutions and worldwide politicking. Economic sanctions were put into effect. Ships going to and from Iraq were stopped on the high seas and searched for forbidden cargo. Secretary of State James Baker and Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz held 11th-hour talks. They failed. And throughout this diplomatic barrage, Allied troops and war machines were arriving in Saudi Arabia in case diplomacy failed. Fox correspondents covering the Gulf say they believe the diplomats did their best to bargain with Iraq, but that war became inevitable.
I think the Allies initially were very anxious that this should be resolved without a war. There were various shuttle diplomacy efforts made by James Baker, by the British Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd and so on. They all came to nothing in the end.
What you saw was an Iraqi refusal to see that what they'd done was wrong. They played it so hard that I think by the time Christmas had come along, the end of December, the beginning of January 1991, the Americans had no other choice but to go to war.
Indeed, the UN economic sanctions against Saddam Hussein didn't work. At least those in the rarefied air at the top of the Bush administration didn't think so. So the most concentrated air war campaign in history began. The director of operations for Operation Desert Storm, now retired, General Tom Kelly, says it was also the most successful campaign ever.
By any standard, it was spectacularly successful. There's some people looking back now saying, well, it was easy. And the answer to that is, yes, it always is when somebody else shows you how to do it.
Some critics say Washington wanted the war, even needed it. And as for the efforts of diplomacy, they say Washington was naive if it thought Saddam Hussein would back down. He has never backed down. Remember, they say, this is a man who committed genocide against his own people to get what he wanted during the Iran-Iraq war. And so the U.S. and the Allied coalition plunged headlong into war, the most high-tech, the most censored, the most sanitized version of war ever seen. The White House and the Pentagon were making absolutely sure that the media and American public reaction to this war did not have the same impact they did in Vietnam. Writer Gail Sheehy, who has excellent Mideast sources, believes, as many others do, that the U.S. made a huge mistake in underestimating Saddam Hussein.
Once George Bush declared personal attack on him, no matter what annihilation it meant for his country, Saddam was not going to back down, because he doesn't care what happens to people, and he doesn't have to be reelected. And if we had understood that, I think we would have gone about, we would not have had to push it all the way.
But General Kelly doesn't agree. At a conservative forum last weekend in Long Beach, Kelly said the real reason for the war was to keep Saddam Hussein from using massive oil profits to develop more nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons than he already had.
Had he gone into Saudi Arabia just along the coast for 250 kilometers and taken over the Saudi oil fields, he would have possessed 45% of the known oil reserves in the world. And that's the reason that we had to go after Saddam Hussein and stop him.
Kuwait has begun the process now of rebuilding. It's going to take a long time. The Iraqis destroyed almost everything. And Kuwaiti nationals living here in the Southland say democracy is on the way to that emirate.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet. Okay, but hopes are there. The Emir of Kuwait promised that we will have back our parliament 1992, October 1992, and we will have a new election in the country.
Today, Kuwaitis see themselves as winners. After all, they got their country back. And many Americans see President Bush as a winner. He's more popular now than ever before. Conveniently, an election year is just around the corner. Hundreds of victory parades like this one show clearly how the American people feel about our stand in the desert.
Way to go. Thank you. All right. Good job, man.
The Persian Gulf War has had a legacy of death of thousands of people, of enormous environmental damage, of new political alliances, and old enemies still in power. We'll have that part of the story tomorrow on Fox 11 News.
More world news straight ahead. You may be shocked when you hear from refugees how people in the Soviet Union on the Soviet Republic of Moldova are living these days.
Plus, rock star Axl Rose marching to his own drummer again. You'll hear about his latest run-in with the law.
I'm Rick Garcia. Where does one of the shrewdest managers in baseball get advice on how to bring his team out of a slump? From the fans. Where else? We'll have one fan's opinion by Tommy Lasorda later in sports.
To date, viewer tips to America's Most Wanted have led to the capture of 160 fugitives. Friday, you'll see some of the most dangerous still at large. Police say this man committed murder and thought he made a clean getaway until he killed another who tried to stop his escape. And see the true story of a 13-year-old girl who uses her own frightening experience to fight back against sexual assault. Watch America's Most Wanted Friday.
The Dodger File is presented by Pacific Bell Smart Yellow Pages. September 2nd, 1979, Manny Mota singles to right, his 145th career pinch hit to break the Major League record. He wasn't finished.
Everybody came here from somewhere else to get away from there to do what it is they want to do here.
So that's probably why everyone in L.A. needs the Pacific Bell Smart Yellow Pages.
Use this for taxi cabs, because I don't drive.
You live in L.A. and you don't drive? That's pretty weird. Maybe you can dream up something that isn't in there.
Persian tapestries.
Persian tapestries.
Tattooing, tape, tapestries.
Any particular need for these tapestries?
You know, magic carpet.
Magic carpet and stuff like that, uh-huh.
Yeah.
That'll solve the driving problem on it, yeah. You belong in L.A., I think you're right. I think you found a home here.
Manny Mota retired as a player at the end of the 1979 season with 147 career pinch hits. But in August of 1980, he was called back out of the coach's box and responded with 3 more pinch hits in 7 at-bats to raise his own Major League record total to 150.
This week, Alpha Beta has a terrific sale in store for you on Butcher's Pride Steaks. Every cut trimmed to quarter-inch perfection and priced the way you like them. Lean, juicy porterhouse or T-bone steaks are just $2.79 a pound. Boneless top sirloin, just $2.59 a pound. And tender filet mignon, just $5.99 a pound. All with a double-your-money-back guarantee. The Alpha Beta Butcher's Pride Steak Sale. One more way to cut your cost of living at Alpha Beta.
Late word just into Fox News, and it is more bad news from Ventura County. 9 of the workers cleaning up the chemicals spilled in that train derailment in Ventura County have now been exposed to that deadly chemical, hydrazine. So far, there is no specific word on their condition, but a Ventura hospital spokesman says that the 9 are suffering eye and throat irritations. In Yugoslavia, they are bracing for continued fighting. Today, the president of Croatia called up all reserve military forces. Now, that move comes in the wake of a fierce battle that left this village a virtual ghost town. Yugoslav Army jets launched a destructive attack on the village, which had been one of the Croatians' last strongholds in this Serbian-populated region. Croatian forces are severely outmanned and outgunned by the Serbian-dominated Federal Army. Today's call-up will add about 30,000 troops to the 70,000 now in service. Armed guards have now been posted to protect a wounded man in Lithuania. He is the only potential witness to that execution-style murder of 6 border guards yesterday. Investigators say they plan to question Soviet security forces about those shootings. Many Lithuanians believe that the raid was carried out by the Soviet Interior Ministry's Black Beret anti-riot troops. You'll recall that they were implicated in last January's military crackdown in the Baltics that took 22 lives.
Nationalistic fervor, which is not always pretty, is on the rise in many parts of the Soviet Union. From Lithuania now to the breakaway Republic of Moldavia, now called Moldova. There, Russians are a minority, as are Turks, Jews, Armenians, a mixture pretty well describing the Kasyan family. They say they've been persecuted and abused just for speaking Russian. The language in Moldova is Romanian. So where do you go? Well, the Kasyans were granted refugee status and came to the United States, where their brother has been since 1978. You're looking at a man with a weight on his shoulders, tempered by a deep love of family. Misha Kasyan, now a U.S. citizen, is sponsoring his entire family, his mother, who arrived a couple of weeks ago, and now his brother, sister, and their families. In all, 8 refugees. These are not exactly your huddled masses. The Soviet Union has lost some of its professionals on this flight. Misha's sister, Nellie, was a school teacher in Moldavia. His brother, Gennady, a gymnastics coach and music teacher. In their families, a mechanical engineer, a construction supervisor, a cement specialist, a pre-med student, and this pair of wide eyes, not yet born when Misha left the Soviet Union 13 years ago.
I've never seen this girl yet in my life.
Even this little one, they say, was a victim of the anti-Russian sentiment of the 80s. In Moldavia, she was beaten when she spoke Russian on the street. They say perestroika has not been good to them. It's made them victims of the ugly side of nationalism. And the State Department must agree, here they are. 7 refugees, 20 bags. How do you put your life into 3 suitcases? Misha said, just bring the pictures, the memories. The rented van takes them to the 2 apartments Misha could afford on his optician's pay. There'll be English lessons, then everybody works. The rest, Misha says, will come.
I have right now 8 people to support and teach them everything from alphabet to pushing the buttons on the doorbell and stuff like that. It's different, all different. And it's, I'm just happy.
Here's the source of much of this family's strength. This petite matriarch was a first lieutenant of reconnaissance forces in World War II. Galina Kasyan was decorated for her work as a scout behind German lines. She speaks of it with great pride and shows little regret at leaving her homeland.
When I was young, I believed the Soviet system and I really loved the country. She was waiting for a good life that was promised by founding fathers of Russian Revolution, and came to understanding that all was lie. No, it's not free. It's not free in Russia right now.
The strangeness has been softened by the kindnesses of the apartment manager. She too was once a stranger in a strange land.
I was an immigrant once, and now I'm a citizen, and I know I just feel like helping people who's coming to USA and getting freedom.
So this nation, built by immigrants, now has 8 more. The Soviet Union may be splintering, but there is one uniting value that endures there, the power of the family. Now, Misha has been looking forward to showing his family some of the wonders of this country. Tomorrow night, we'll go along as they make their first visit to an American supermarket.
That will be an experience for him.
It was.
Mark Thompson takes his neighborhood weather to Venice tonight. Hey, Mark, what's going on out there?
Hello. It's this is wild. We've got a letter from Alexander Bernard, who's right here, and a musician. And you sound like an intriguing. What kind of music is it, Alexander?
It's kind of like a cutting edge of reggae rock, you know, with a little bit of a message to it.
You've got the reggae thing happening with the hair.
Oh,
you young people with the hair, I love that.
No, this is real, you know. It's just like, it's real.
Do you do it every morning? How does that work?
It's just, I wake up in the morning, it's there.
It's, you did not disappoint me. You look like a musician. And your accent is, where are you from?
I'm from London, actually.
And these are all your neighbors?
These are all my neighbors, my friends and neighbors.
And one of them's holding the album, Too Much Pressure, it's Man as Art.
Man as Art.
But it's spelled sort of as one word.
M-A-N-A-Z-R-T.
We're very short on time. I got some weather to talk about. You probably want to hear some of the...
Yeah, well, if you would like to hear something...
If you can, a handful of seconds, will that destroy you as an artist just to have a...
I don't know. It depends if they like it or not.
Play just a handful of seconds.
Go
okay.
ahead. Go ahead. Do I do it? Yeah.
And then we'll talk some real weather. Okay, this is... Good beat. Are there some lyrics here, or is this just pretty much
right
it?
Right now, lyrics coming up.
Yeah.
Have you read the news today?
They're pushing me along.
Seems like trouble.
I want to talk about how cool the summer's been. We'll just fade and comfortably talk about quickly how cool by the way, it sounds great, and I did hear it before the whole tune through, and I'm angry I wasn't in the video. There were no 90-degree days in July. On the next video, perhaps?
Why? I don't know.
The last 90-degree reading at the Civic Center was May 6th. Now, we've been talking about this all summer, but I really think at the end of July here, it's worth reflecting. 79.1 degrees was the average high, the average low 62.9, the average 71. Now, that's 3 degrees below normal. The rainfall, though, by contrast, was 1300ths. That 1300s above normal. That is, normally we get no rain in July. So that, I think, all worth noting. Today, the thunderstorms diminished. As you know, we talked about that last night, that all that sort of uncomfortable activity that was associated with the thunder showers has all moved off to the north and east. 80 and 64 on the day at the Civic Center. We saw some 90-degree readings inland, 60s and 70s along the coast. There will be some dense fog along the coast tomorrow morning. 64 right now at Fox and Hollywood. South-southwest winds, barometers 29.96. Now look at all that convective activity. That's the thunder shower activity. Now east and north generally of the Southland. High pressure has taken control, and that high pressure will trigger some mountain and desert thunderstorms. That over the next couple of days. Otherwise, it should be hazy, but nevertheless sunny and warmer in the basin over the next couple of days. That is 90s in the valleys, 70s along the coast, and the marine layer is going to be not quite as deep. We will have unhealthful levels of smog. In fact, there will be first stage alert San Gabriel and Pomona valleys, Riverside and San Bernardino areas. Elsewhere you can see it'll be generally moderate to unhealthful air over the Southland. So the forecast will be for dense morning fog right along the immediate coast. Otherwise, it should be sunshine and warm inland. Temperatures in the 90s, a little over 80 degrees Civic Center, and about